the questions that you have received. A couple of them. I think there is one company who's currently speaking with HSBC, and they have been requested to give future forecast of the parent company in India. That the loan is up to about £250,000. What can be done? Can this be taken offline? So I think this seems to be very specific to that particular company.
So, I think that might be that would be a good one to take offline. So yeah, I can provide my email address, and I'm happy to have a conversation about that one.
There is one from an immigration perspective, and David, if you could, the company is suggesting that the understanding is that communication of furloughing to the employees can be sent over an email, and that should be sufficient. Is that correct, or do we need to follow some other procedure?
I mean, no, I think that would dip into employment law issues here as well. I think it needs, in any event, it needs written consent from the employee, i.e. a response to that email. It can't just simply be an email saying that you're being furloughed. There has to be an agreement in place between both parties.
Yeah, I looked at that query as well. So the rules anticipate that there'll be a written letter signed by the employer that the employee signs and returns, and therefore there can be no dispute that the employees agreed to the terms. I think getting to the post box at the moment is a bit more difficult than it would ordinarily be. So if the organisation can set up some sort of digital signature, so that there can be no dispute that the employee has actually consented to the terms, they have actually signed it, and can't later dispute that they entered into these terms, I think that would be sufficient, because we're all having to find workarounds when normal measures are not possible. So I think an email that requires some sort of digital signature and return is fine. An email to an employee just saying you're being furloughed, don't turn up on Monday, is not fine.
Yeah. Also,
the question also relates to reporting to the Home Office about furloughing, then email is definitely not sufficient. We've covered reporting of furloughed workers to the Home Office. There is no duty under the COVID-19 guidance to report it to the Home Office through the SMS account, but erring on the side of caution, you should keep internal records in case the Home Office turns around in a couple of weeks' time and asks you.
There was a good question, sorry to cut across you, Kishore, a question by, this will be true for a number of the attendees on this call, of an organisation that banks with the State Bank of India. And the State Bank of India are not part of the recognised banks for the purpose of the business bank, so the organisation can't avail any of the loans from their existing bank. Paul, what experience will businesses have if they approach a bank that they don't already have a relationship with?
So we're hearing it's quite difficult for banks to approach banks that they don't currently bank with. I think what we're hearing is that businesses have their best chance of doing it if they get in touch with NatWest, because they're I think the government, because the government still have a large stake in the RBS and NatWest group. That's the best one to approach. What we're hearing is that the banks are very much prioritising their own customers and working their way through the backlog. I think if you do have a good case, then I'd hope that NatWest would look at the case very carefully.
I mean, I'd say, Paul, just my own experience of this is the bounce back loan is likely to be the better option if they're going to a bank that they don't know, rather than trying to go down the CBILS route, which would limit the loan to 50,000. But for small businesses, that might be sufficient for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Keisha, were there any other questions you wanted to draw in?
Again, for David, there's one question on what would happen if a sponsor migrant refused to be furloughed.
Good question. Then there's a potential there that the employee could run the risk of being made redundant or their employment being terminated. But again, as Tim mentioned previously, you have to go through appropriate consultation procedures, etc. It can't just be a one-off situation.
I mean, if it's a single employee that you've got that problem with, the consultation period can be quite short. But if you've got a group of, say, 25, 30 employees that are all refusing to be furloughed, your consultation period is longer. And whilst you're consulting, I think they're still entitled to their full salary. So ideally, you want to avoid going into consultation. You want to seek consent from the employees in an informal sense, rather than having to go down the prescribed route of consultation. I mean, it's certainly one where anything to do with employment law, some of the businesses on this call will have will have their own internal HR departments. Otherwise, CDS Mayfair have got their HR team as well, and certainly you can approach Moore, Kingston Smith, and we can give you some guidance. So Subir, who's one of our colleagues at CDS Mayfair, says consultation for a one-off employee can be very short, a couple of weeks. So that helps if it's a small number. If it's a larger number, if it were more than 100, for example, you'd be consulting for 45 days.
Great. Tim, there is one for you. Is it correct that the leaves accrued even during the furlough has to be compensated based on the regular pay and not on the furloughed amount?
Yeah, I looked at that query as well just when it came in. So what's certainly true is that when an individual takes holiday during their furlough period, and to begin with, we didn't think that was even possible, but the government have come out to confirm that individuals can take holiday during furlough. An employer can even require that their employees take holiday during their furlough period, provided the adequate notice is given. And for the holiday time that the employee takes under the working time directive that entitles each employee to 5.6 weeks paid holiday a year, the holiday is paid at the normal salary level, not the furloughed salary level. If you pay at a reduced level, you're in breach of the working time directive. And what will absolutely definitely happen after this period is there'll be ambulance chasing law firms trying to get employees to go for claims against their employers, because that always happens after a crisis. So my own view is that the holiday should be paid at the full pay. Now, I think the question was specifically about the holidays that accrue during the furlough period, and I'm afraid that's beyond my employment law knowledge, because if the contract's been amended such that the salary's been reduced, that may entitle the holiday to be paid at reduced rate, but I would err very much on the side of caution and continue to pay at the full rate. I mentioned the sums at stake are not very large, and to pay at the full rate just avoids the risk of claims later. So if it's particularly critical to your business, do send that question in by email and we'll get one of our employment law experts to look at it. But my own view is you would pay at the full rate. That does include Friday. Don't forget Friday in the UK is a bank holiday to celebrate VE Day, the 75-year anniversary. And that, if that forms part of an employee's holiday entitlement for the year, even if they're on furlough and on 80% salary, that holiday is paid at the full rate. So you need to make sure that your payroll provider processing the furlough payroll is able to process it with the correct amount being paid.
Just one more for you, Tim. This company has one employee and they've already paid the salary. Are they still eligible for the UK grant?
Yes, I mean, there's nothing to prevent an organisation with just one employee in the UK furloughing them. But if you've only got one employee in the UK, the requirement that that employee does nothing may be more difficult to satisfy, because if something needs to happen in the UK and you've only got one employee here, well, they obviously are the person that need to do it. If you've got 3 employees, you might be able to furlough 2 of them, and the one remaining can keep a watch on everything. So if you're happy that you can arrange things such that that employee provides no service to you, the employer, during that period, then absolutely you can furlough them. If you've paid them the salary already, that's fine. You would just put in your grant application now, and you would claim for the period in which that employee has been providing no service. Now, if all of your UK clients have cancelled their projects and they haven't been able to leave the house to go and find any new ones, you may find that they meet the furlough requirements all the way back to the 1st of March, and therefore the grant claim can be made for that period. But do look critically at this condition that no service is provided. If they've been doing even fairly basic tasks, that's probably a service being provided, and the furlough period cannot commence until that activity reduces to nothing.
And just one quick one on the business rate side. Will this be applicable for businesses in the care sector?
Yes, I see no reason why not. Certain businesses in the care sector, I think particularly those that care for disabled individuals, may be exempt from business rates on general principles. But if you're an organisation that pays business rates and your commercial premises that you occupy have a rateable value of less than £15,000, then you will be eligible for the £10,000 grant. A care business wouldn't be a leisure, hospitality or retail business, so you wouldn't be entitled to the existing higher £25,000 grant. But do watch the announcements this week. The slide which I summarise the announcement on the 2nd of May would be further grants of up to £25,000, where we're still waiting for details. But in principle, nothing to prevent a care business from qualifying for those. I think we just need to await that detail. And make sure that if you do qualify, you get your application into the local authority very quickly, because they've got a finite amount of funding from central government to pay these grants out.
Okay. Next is an immigration question. As a Tier 2 sponsor, what happens if my business ceases trading permanently in the wake of the pandemic?
I mean, the guidance doesn't refer to COVID-19, but it does refer to instances where businesses go into liquidation, or there's a compulsory voluntary arrangement. In those instances, then the sponsored employees, the employer would need to notify through the sponsor management system, the SMS, we need to notify the Home Office of that change if they cease trading. And the sponsored workers, I would think I have 60 days notification in which to find another sponsor or leave the UK.
Okay. I think the last one, David, what happens if the sponsored migrant contracts COVID-19 whilst furloughed?
Sorry, could you repeat that again, Kishore?
What happens if a sponsored migrant contracts COVID-19 whilst furloughed?
Yeah, I think with that one, the sponsored migrant, if he is being paid statutory sick pay, he is entitled to that. Once that runs out, the migrant can be sponsored. The migrant can be furloughed again. It's unclear whether the migrant can be furloughed whilst they're ill. But once the statutory sick pay and in the absence of any contractual sick pay, once that runs out, then the guidance says it can be furloughed again.
Okay. Okay. I think we are kind of just up over time. Any other question? I request everyone to just email it to me. You have my email address on the screen. So I just quickly said thank you to all of you guys, all the panelists as well. I hope this session was useful and we could address some of the queries that you had. We'd be happy to chat with you at a later time and discuss any particular areas that you would want more clarity on. Thank you for the panelists from CDS Mayfair for their support. We look forward to welcoming you all to our next webinar. We'll send the details soon. Thank you once again and take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.